Turning now to politics, another nightmare of a legal week for the former president, where nothing seems to be going his way in the court of law. But the court of public opinion is another matter entirely, where Trump is surging in the polls and in fundraising. But does the looming third or even fourth indictment finally loosen Trump's grip over the GOP? Joining us to discuss this and more is Caroline Heldman, professor of critical theory and social justice at Occidental College, as she does every Thursday. Good morning, Caroline.
Good morning, Giselle. Great to see you.
Lots to get to today. As you know, the special counsel sent that target letter to the former president listing 3 potential charges. 2 of them somewhat expected: conspiracy to defraud the U.S., tampering with the witness. But number 3 is somewhat of a surprise, which is, it says, deprivation of rights guaranteed by the Constitution. What do you make of that one?
Well, it is hard to say because we don't have the specifics, but deprivation of rights under color of law generally refers to someone in a position of authority, often an elected official, who is charged with denying someone a constitutional right. We are guessing that the right here at play is voting, that the charge will be that Trump tried to deprive people of their constitutional right to vote. Again, we don't know for sure, but what all of this means is that the charges are far more sweeping than what the Trump camp had imagined. It's possible that there were other witnesses who came in that they simply were not anticipating. We will likely know in the next couple of weeks when an indictment is expected.
Yeah, we haven't heard from former Chief of Staff Mark Meadows recently. Does that suggest to you anything?
It does. There are a number of people, I think, who may have cooperated with this case, meaning that they didn't get target letters because they're essentially witnesses against Trump. It is hard to say, again, all speculation at this point, but Mark Meadows would be a likely suspect.
And Giuliani did not get one either. All right, in Michigan, 16 Republicans charged in the fake elector scheme, and we expect similar charges in Arizona as well as Georgia. Now, this all suggests a conspiracy. How strong is this case? How perilous for the former president?
You know, it is, again, tough to say. We know that the Attorney General Nessel issued many felony charges in this particular case against these 16 Republicans, most of them involving forgery. They're facing 5 to 14 years for each count. But we're in uncharted territory at this point, right? Because we have not actually had a fake electors try to overturn or be part of an attempt to overturn an election. So what I will say is that whatever happens in these particular cases at the state level will set precedents for years to come and will send a very clear message about the responsibility of local party officials when it comes to deciding presidential elections in a lawful manner.
Unprecedented indeed. All right, despite, though, all of this, Trump appears undamaged politically, even releasing these sweeping plans to expand his presidential powers if reelected, doing away with checks and balances. And Republicans are embracing this. What does that tell you?
Well, it's a troubling sign. We saw it under Richard Nixon when Dick Cheney said that he wanted to expand the office and power of the presidency. We saw it under George W. Bush when post 9/11 we engaged in torture in other countries and got around the Constitution through a variety of means using expanded presidential power. Every constitutional scholar who studies the presidency pretty much agrees that the office is already expanded well beyond what the framers intended. So it is troubling that Donald Trump is actually laying out a plan to shift the form of government that is already out of balance. So yeah, this is another kind of major threat to democracy if this plan is implemented.
But Republicans are standing by the former president, no matter the number of indictments or plans for expanding his presidential powers, including Speaker McCarthy. But it was not always this way, as you well know. Here's what he had to say right after January 6th. Take a listen.
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress by mob rioters.
But here's McCarthy this week after learning Trump is about to be indicted on January 6 charges.
He's not. I don't see how he could be found criminally responsible. He did not charge it. Well, what criminal activity did he do?
So the Speaker of the House, third in line to the presidency, undermining the DOJ before seeing a single fact of the case. Will this come to define his legacy?
It may well define his legacy, and this is what I dislike the most about politics. I understand we have a party system, and if you don't win elections, it doesn't matter what your party believes, so partisanship trumps everything else. But in this particular instance, you see a very obvious example of an elected official who's on the phone with Trump during the insurrection, trying to get him to call off the dogs, knowing he has that power, and then very clearly saying, look, Trump inspired this, and telling the truth, who now obviously has done a 180, is not telling the truth about January 6th. We all saw it unfold before our very eyes. There's been an attempt to revise history, and McCarthy's been a big part of that. Again, just the worst part of politics, where you have to play into partisanship rather than actually telling your truth.
Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, there was a second whistleblower claiming a weaponized DOJ has refused to hold Hunter Biden and the president accountable for taking in millions from foreign sources. Democrats obviously calling this political theater. Is there something here, Caroline?
I think there may be something here. Anytime someone puts their job on the line and comes forward as a whistleblower, I think everyone needs to sit up and listen. The question is, it's two agents who say, look, we had evidence, and then the decisions that were made about what to prosecute and what not to prosecute didn't match the evidence that we had. Now, is that a common conflict in these sorts of investigations? Absolutely. Was it politically driven? That's the big question. But I don't think that Democrats, again, with the partisanship, don't just dismiss this. These are people who are putting their job on the line to come forward and talk to Congress about what they witnessed.
Yeah, and under oath. All right, we are seeing a lot of talk of third-party candidates who could possibly play a spoiler. First, there's Robert Kennedy Jr. polling as high as 20% despite anti-Semitic and offensive comments. And there's Senator Joe Manchin, who also says he's considering a run. Do either pose a real threat to President Biden?
I don't think they pose a threat to President Biden in the primary. Now, if one or both of them stays and goes into the general election as a third-party candidate, like Ross Perot did in 1992, there could be a potential spoiler effect here. There's some evidence that while it didn't shift the outcome of the election in 1992, it took Bill Clinton's margin from about 7% to almost 1%. So I would say that Biden needs to be worried if they take it into the general election and they're well-funded, but otherwise these aren't serious threats for his candidacy for the Democratic nomination.
Right. Okay, we could stay on the election, but I do want to ask you about some troubling news coming out of Texas. We saw heartbreaking testimony from 3 women describing their experiences with the Texas abortion ban. We're seeing similar pushback to these bans in courthouses across the country. What does that tell you?
It tells me that a lot of men in power were playing political football with women's bodies, and who's paying the price? Women, with sepsis, with babies being born without brains, being forced to carry babies to term. It was absolutely heart-wrenching. If you looked at what happened in that courtroom, there was not a dry eye in the House, and that includes all of the attorneys. So it just means that the courts are now going to have to clean up the mess that folks have made at the federal level with this abortion ban.
Yeah, we just saw the humanity from those women, not the politics. So necessary. All right, Caroline Heldman, as always, thank you for your insights and perspective. We so appreciate you, Professor of Critical Theory and Social Justice at Occidental College. See you next week.
Thanks, Giselle.
We'll be right back.